Hello, welcome to GeoBytes, your daily roundup of news from geospatial industry. I'm your host Bhanu. For the next 15 minutes, I will bring you the news of the top developments across projects, products, policies, and business. Google is testing a carpooling pilot program called Ride With in Israel. The service has been developed by an Israeli-founded navigation app called Waze, which Google has acquired in 2013. Currently in its beta stage, the service is connecting drivers who use the Waze app with travelers who have requested rides using the Ride With app. Neighbors on similar commute routes or co-workers who live near each other can use the app during standard rush hour times. The payment is made directly through the app. Riders pitch in on the cost of the gas as well as on the wear and tear of the vehicle. Viewers might recall that ride-sharing services have come under fire in many countries recently. In France, Uber was forced to suspend its Uber Pop carpool service following riots by local taxi drivers. That could perhaps be the reason Waze has limited its drivers to just 2 trips a day from home to work and back. By clarifying that the service is not designed to provide people with a full-time job, the company is trying hard not to upset taxi drivers and regulators. It should help that the navigation app already boasts of a large navigation base. Users contribute information like road accidents, creating a wealth of road and mapping data. On Twitter, Weedsman wasn't too positive about the development. He said, "Watch it get banned like Uber by the taxi unions." Twitter user Todd Fox, however, was more optimistic. "Could be interesting," he said. Well, one thing is for sure, Google doesn't want to create hype about the service for now. Waze spokeswoman Julie Mosler has already played down the move by saying that the company regularly experiments with new ideas in its backyard and that they have nothing specific to announce at this time. But it would be interesting to see how Uber and Lyft react to this new threat. We will keep you posted right here on GeoBuiz. Closer home, reports are coming in that Ford has intensified research efforts to develop a self-driving car. The company executives told Reuters that Ford is expanding advanced safety technology to include automatic braking. The new system would allow for hands-free operation of cars by automating steering, braking and throttle under specific conditions. It should be noted that in Europe, Ford's Mondeo sedan is already equipped with automatic braking and pedestrian detection. Let us show you how the technology works.
In the new Ford Mondeo, engineers have come up with a pedestrian detection system that addresses that.
The system works by using 2 sensors, a forward-looking windshield-mounted camera and a forward-looking radar. The signals of both sensors are merged and monitor the area in front of the vehicle. If there is a pedestrian and a collision becomes imminent, the driver receives an audible and visual warning. This gives the driver time to react. If the driver stays unresponsive, the vehicle is applying the brakes autonomously with maximum possible deceleration.
Cameras are used to identify a pedestrian in the car's path, and then a radar beam is used to measure the distance between the person and the car. A computer then uses an algorithm to predict where they are likely to step next. It's a technology that engineers hope will prevent collisions between cars and pedestrians and reduce the number of people.
However, Ford is a latecomer in the race for self-driving cars. General Motors, Audi, Mercedes-Benz and Tesla have already announced that they will launch semi-automated driving systems by the end of 2016. In another development, the Los Angeles Department of Transportation has launched a new public web map which gives a spatial view of the projects in its People Street program. The map pulls City of Los Angeles, Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority and the County of Los Angeles data into a single view. It also shows the city's transportation infrastructure network as well as parks and other public open spaces. Layers such as existing and future metro rail lines, bicycle facilities, and street designations can be toggled on and off. Users can zoom in for greater details as well. The department hopes that the community leaders and the public will use the map to identify places in their neighborhoods that might benefit from a parklet or plaza installation and then apply to the program. Army Master Sergeant Stephen Lodes, who is a geospatial analyst at an Illinois Engineer Command, has become the first member of the unit's newly formed geospatial cell. Lodes believes that geospatial engineering is an art and science that goes beyond two-dimensional maps. He says that GIS-enabled maps not only help the military fight the enemy, but also help them decide where to set up bases and build infrastructure in the first place. Lodes says that his focus on the terrain analysis would be huge because the terrain changes as the earth changes. To get that analytical data up to date would be quite useful to any military unit. Do you want to know how your neighborhood looked like in the 1900s? Well, the US Geological Survey just made that task easier for you. The USGS National Map Program has collaborated with the National Geologic Map Database Project to launch an application called TopoView. The platform holds more than 178,000 USGS digitized legacy topographic maps sourced from the USGS Historical Topographic Map Collection. Users can explore, view, and download these scanned quadrangle maps georeferenced at various scales. The maps date from the late 1880s to 2010.
See a list of map downloads. For each map, we've provided a variety of downloadable file formats in order to meet a range of user needs. These formats include high-resolution JPEG, Google Earth KMZ, GeoPDF, and GeoTIFF. Simply click any one of them to download. On the right of the window, you'll see a preview image of the map. Click this image to view the map in high resolution. Next to the preview image, you'll find a counter showing the number of maps that were published at that particular point. Above the preview image, you'll find controls that let you zoom or pan to the extent of the selected map.
In another development, Microsoft has given Bing Maps for Web a makeover. The new maps focus more on trip planning than just routing from one destination to another. It has been designed to allow users to search, view, and share multiple places at one time. You can also view reviews and photos from partner sites like Yelp. The new Bing Maps offer a rich set of visuals and information on the places and the users plan to visit, making it easier for them to plan ahead. What's more, the new split-screen layout gives a great street-side view for your destination while displaying the map directly below it. Global Communications and Information Company MDA has been awarded 3 contracts by the Malaysian Remote Sensing Agency. Under the agreement, MDA will provide Earth observation satellite RadarSat-2 data to the agency. It would also set up a ground station to process the information and provide training to develop a variety of products. The Malaysian Remote Sensing Agency plans to use the data from RadarSat-2 to support a number of applications such as flood monitoring, maritime and agricultural monitoring, and natural resource management. The agency will also develop digital elevation products to be used in a variety of mapping applications. We will now slip into a short break, but when we return, more from the world of mapping, and let's take a look at what's happening in the United Kingdom.
Once again, Trimble is leading the way in positioning technology with the new Trimble R8S GNSS receiver. An entirely new way to look at receiver possibilities. Simply choose the configuration and features you require today. Then, add features as you need them tomorrow. It's the ultimate in scalability. With this innovative receiver, you tailor your system to your job, to the way you work. Choose the level of configuration that suits your needs. As your requirements change, the Trimble R8S can adapt. You simply add functionality whenever you want it. Each Trimble R8S comes standard with integrated Maxwell 6 chips, Trimble 360 tracking technology, and more. All to keep you productive and expand the reach of your GNSS system. Plus, it offers our exclusive web UI for remote monitoring and the new Trimble DL Android app for GNSS data logging. And the Trimble R8S maximizes productivity by easily integrating with the Trimble S-Series total stations and our innovative V10 imaging rover. For ultimate field efficiency, combine the Trimble R8S receiver with a Trimble controller and the intuitive Trimble Access Field software. Trust Trimble Business Center to help you edit, process, and adjust your data. It's the kind of solution you have come to expect from Trimble. We've been setting the standard in positioning technology for more than 30 years. See how we're raising the bar again with the Trimble R8S GNSS receiver.
Welcome back. Aerial mapping specialist Blue Sky of UK is on a recruitment drive. The company has reportedly expanded its workforce in the Leicestershire country by more than 20%. Ordnance Service David Findlay has joined the company as the new business development manager. A new production manager has also been roped in to produce UK-wide geographic data solutions, including aerial photography, height models, and the national tree map. Rachel Tidmarsh, the managing director for Blue Sky International, says that these appointments will allow the company to continue the expansion of the national tree map to include Scotland and to capture aerial photography in Ireland, among others. UK-based aerial photography company Get Mapping has bagged a 3-year contract to host the All Wales Mapping Services Framework datasets. The framework will provide a cloud-hosted base mapping service covering the whole of Wales, including a 2-kilometer buffer along the Welsh border with England. It can be accessed through desktop GIS, mobile or web mapping applications. The service will be available to all public sector mapping agreement members, including local authorities, police, fire and rescue organizations, national parks and Public Health Wales. From the world of mapping, the updated version of the Microsoft UltraMap workflow software system is now available for purchase. Version 3.9 enables UltraCam customers to produce richer data products, work more efficiently and cost-effectively, and extend their data offerings. The UltraMap photogrammetric workflow software enables management and processing of vast amounts of digital aerial data produced by Microsoft UltraCam digital aerial sensors. With the new version, you can get 3D visual analytics, rapid reprocessing of orthos with radiometry settings and interface improvements, among other things. UltraMap is also offering noise-reduced point cloud and oblique aerial triangulation support for improved exterior orientation of oblique images. A new Google Maps update has introduced some nifty features for Android users. With Maps 9.11, Google will allow sharing of its My Maps feature. The update also enables as a full screen mode that takes unused items like the search bar away. A tap on the screen will remove unnecessary interface elements. Tapping the screen again brings the buttons and text entirely field back. You can also edit the captions for any Google photos that are geotagged. These would be available under the Your Places tab. That's all we have for you in GeoBytes today. Find us on www.geobiz.com and follow GeoBuiz on Twitter. We will be back shortly with GeoBuiz exclusive. Stay tuned.
Can you tell us a little bit about Geo and what it is that you do in the organization?
We have a lot of obviously formidable competitors in the mapping space.
But saying human geo, I was like perplexed. Why the name human to the geospatial angle?
If we think about land, I mean, land is a key core to prosperity.
Thank you, Hugo, for speaking with GeoBuiz and Geospatial World.
Welcome. Thank you for agreeing to speak. Can you tell a little bit about what the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, does? What's your role?
The overall objective of Food and Agriculture Organization is to reduce the extreme hunger in the world. So this is the frame where we are going, and there are several objectives which I follow this: to make the agriculture more productive, have more resilient agriculture, to increase the productivity, and the final goal is to end up the extreme hunger in the world. And the Tenure unit where I'm working has a lot to do with that, because the tenure is relation between people and land, people and forestry, or people and fisheries or other resources. So it defines who has which rights over which period of time, under which condition. So you have to know, in case of climate change, where is the available land, what is happening here. You should know who lives there to send the right messages to the people, what kind of crops they should grow, more resilient, etc. So whatever you are doing, or smart cities, like you need to know, if you want to extend the road, you need which properties are affected or who lives there. Even if informal settlement, someone has right to stay there, and you always touch the rights of people, and the land is very emotionally attached to to people. Everybody knows this is my house or this is where I live, and it's really something which gives possibility to people to live with and to feed their children.
So it's really bringing, at a very basic level, geospatial information to the human level, to the individual level.
It's always about location.
Right.
Where is this? And you want to build new road or new highway, or you want to make a factory, or you want to build a school. You affect someone place of living or working, and you want to do that in inclusive way and not to affect people. And the social dimension and the environment, it's also very important.
So in 2012, the FAO published, I hope I got this correct, the voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure, land, fisheries, and forests. Can you tell us a little bit about the guidelines?
Yeah, this is a document which is not FAO document, so the first clarification.
It's not a what document?
It's
not
not
an
FAO
okay.
document.
Okay.
So it was a process led by FAO, which originally came from the increasing demand for natural resources and land, like growing urbanization, growing population, and climate change, changing diet, these natural disasters happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, in many countries you have weak institutions which are not prepared to deal with this growing pressure for more resources.
Right.
And therefore the United Nations started an initiative to see how much the governments can commit to resolve this huge problem which is growing every day. And there is a long consultation process when we did several meetings in all continents to see where the people see the problems, what were the best practices, what worked, what doesn't work. And there was open-ended working group established, so everyone who is expert in some of this field could contribute. And then the zero draft was prepared document. And then several rounds of negotiations with all UN member states. It was not easy, like the rules were everything or nothing. So if you do not reach the final chapter of this document to negotiate, it's nothing. So you should go till the end. And it was a lot of serious responses, and the government was thinking, like, if we vote for that, we shall do it. And then it was really a lot of thinking, asking permission for governments to agree with the text. And then the Committee on Food Security, which is the highest level dealing with food security, endorsed the document on the 11th of May. So the strongest part of this document is that the United Nations member states agreed to this document, and they already committed.
And how long did it take from the beginning, from the zero draft to the final approval?
From the zero draft, it's like year and a half.
A year and a half, okay.
It was online consultations, open-ended working groups, many comments, and then 3 rounds of negotiations. We were planning to do in 1 round, but then we didn't reach consensus in all paragraphs, so many open parts left, so we went back. And there was a lot of fight in the section for investments, and one group say, like, you support land grabbing, and the other group say you support only small investors. So there was agreement that the text agreed here, stays as it is, the countries agree, but then there was a follow-up document, Principles for Responsible Agricultural Investments, which was negotiated in October last year, so it gives a little bit more details on that.
And why are these guidelines important?
On one side, these guidelines documented best practices around the world. It's nothing new, it's just best practices which work everywhere and where countries agree that this represent best practices. So when it's some kind of soft law, they're not replacing any existing laws in any country. But the strongest part is that the governments, UN governments, already agree that this really represents the best practices. So it's a document when the government develop policy or law, they can check if what they're suggesting is compliant with the best principles which have been agreed. On the other side, civil societies, if there is more awareness, if they understand what it is, and they were very much involved in the negotiations. They didn't have right to vote. Also, the private sector was involved in the negotiations. They give their opinion and what they agree, what they disagree, but the member state voted. But the civil society can use also the document when the government proposes one or the other law changes or some new policy. They can make sure that what the government proposed, this is like a barometer, if this is right, and if this represents good practices. And there are many other uses, like Coca-Cola first announced that they want to be responsible and they want to follow the voluntary guidelines principles. And after that, Pepsi-Cola and other big companies, which now we are working with them to clarify exactly what this means. One big company like this to be compliant with the voluntary guidelines. And universities can change their programs, because when you deal with territories and development, either smart cities or agricultural development or forestry, you always deal with someone rights who is already there.
Sure. Interesting. So it serves a lot of different purposes.
A lot of, like, private sector wants to use it. Civil society already published a document how they're going to monitor the implementation, make pressure, right things to happen. And then university also, like, they're interested to have program to work with universities to help them to change their programs, to start to teach good governance at the universities, update their programs, and then more scientific work is coming from the universities if they understand the purpose of the document and how they can contribute. And technologies have a lot to offer. Nowadays, without technology, you cannot go very far.
Right. So if you're a government agency in a country and you've read this and you think it's something that your government or your country should start to follow, how does one go about doing that? How do you recommend that?
At the national level, there is a chapter, the last one, which is dealing with the implementation and monitoring and reporting. So and who is responsible for the implementation.
I see.
So what has been agreed is that, considering the voluntary nature of the document, which is not binding document, the state have the responsibility to implement the voluntary guidelines. So it's the state responsibilities. How it works? The first, what has been agreed, that there should be a multi-stakeholder platform established, because always when you extend the road, some are winners, some are losers, or whatever good idea you implement, there are always people who are happy and the other who are not. So you should make such kind of mix of everyone who is affected, either big investors or NGOs or citizens living there, or the government, municipal, and to explain why you are doing that and what's the benefit of community, and how these people who should be displaced, for example, for whatever reason, how they benefit from that. Like, you can say your house is well built, it doesn't follow standards, it's very dangerous. If people understand, they're going to support you. So the basic recommendation, and it has been agreed, that the state should establish multi-stakeholder platform, and it should be inclusive with the government, municipal institutions, private sector, universities, all scientific organizations. So let's them work together to be on the same page, to understand, to have fight, to negotiate between themselves. I know how much fight was here, so I believe it will be, but in such kind of fight, the truth is coming, and the agreement should be reached. And there are a lot of principles and safeguards which protect people who, for whatever reason, they lose their land. Then there's safeguards for compensation or for making another place available for them to live. So you start from this multi-stakeholder platform. And there are 5 general principles and 10 implementing principles. Whatever area you touch, those are valid, and they're based on international conventions for human rights, right to food, right for appropriate housing. And then you go in the technical areas. For example, you decide to implement new property taxation. So there is a chapter for valuation and chapter for taxation. So you respect these principles for inclusiveness, for anti-corruption, for transparency, accountability, etc. And then you see what were the best practices agreed. And the text of language, the language in the document is state should do that, or state must do that, or all parties, or so it's quite well defined whose role is and who should do what. And there are a lot of also parts related to standards, international standards, and development of national standards respecting international.
And so have countries started this process? How long does it take to, once you start the multi-stakeholder process, to get a...
It's different for different countries and different priorities. There are no recipe. There are other tools which can do like initial screening. You feel sick and you don't know exactly what's the illness. So you go to have the X-ray check or something, like a diagnostic, and various problems are identified. And then these multi-stakeholder platforms should work to decide if you have 10 problems, some countries have more than that.
I see.
So you should focus on the most priority area for the government, and then, or for people who are there, say, okay, we agree, like, it's a lot of investments, it's a lot of problems, but let's focus first on 1, 2, 3. And then for these problems which you identify, which you agree as a priority, then you start to look like, what are the laws, what are the regulations, what are the policies, what are the technical matters, who should do something, and it's a lot of recipes here. And then we are doing for specific areas technical guides which support the implementation. And those technical guides are bigger document than this one. And they're like presenting best practices around the world, and you have cases from ABC countries. And the first one was for gender. It's called Governing Land for Women and Men. And then it's interesting, I'm an information technology person. I opened the book, it was 150 pages. You're not going to read it. So I look at the table of content, and there is a section, if you are doing IT system in land administration. So you open the book on that page, and there is a checklist, 7 things you should do. Like make sure gender fields are in the IT system database. So make sure the application submission contains gender
So it's very practical.
Very practical, very easy. You read several things. And then if you still think and you're not convinced, then there are 3, 4 cases from different countries. So we say this is how it works and this is in this country. So it's very simple. You never implement everything because it takes years. So I have been working 20 years in Eastern Europe and Central Asia to improve land administration systems. All countries achieved a lot, but there is still a lot to be done. And one of the implementing principles is continuous improvement. So you do 5 things, and there are another 10 coming. So it's to reach the level to have better world, eliminate extreme hunger, and make people life easier in era of climate change and natural disasters. It's a lot to be done.
Is there any enforcement mechanism?
Really not. Like the enforcement mechanism is from inside the countries. It said it's a voluntary. So if the government doesn't want to implement it, they committed already. So on one side it's voluntary, but on the other side, if there is awareness that the government already committed that this is best practices and this is what they're going to do, there should be pressure from inside the country. And like NGOs and private sector, if things goes wrong, citizens, FAO is doing a lot of the last 2 years, 3 years already. We're spending a lot of efforts on awareness raising, how people can use, how they benefit. You work with the government, but you work with NGOs, you work with private sector. We help countries to start to establish these multi-stakeholder platforms and to start the dialogue. We advise them which tools are available to do the initial screening in an objective way, not like I think so and you think differently. So it's either red, green or yellow, like you're doing bad or you're doing good or you're in the middle. So there are scorecards, there is a mechanism which is developed by the World Bank with a lot of United Nations organization. It's called Land Governance Assessment Framework. Many countries are doing this. It's initial diagnostic, and you identify the gaps.
I see.
And then the government should decide where they want to focus first.
And this is called the Land Governance
Assessment framework.
Assessment framework. I see.
It's like a diagnostic. It uses a lot of indicators, and they end up with scorecards with colors. Even if you don't want to read, you can see the colors. And then several areas pop up as the most critical, and it shows how things are related. Like it's never one thing work alone. Like you improve one, but you can destroy two more. So it's a question to get these diagnostics. Civil societies also have some tools, and some countries have their own diagnostic tools. The question is identify the gaps and start to think from where the priorities are. What laws and regulations do you have? Usually you start with this. In this area you check what you have, and you see which institution is dealing, and if they're strong enough or not. What is the reality in the field? Sometimes institutions have different understanding, and in the field you have another life. So it's like working together is to find the right way. And every country is specific. One thing works in one country, it may not work in the other country. That's why those are principles which are internationally agreed that they're best practices. They're guiding the government how to do and what is important, which are the principles of transparency, accountability, etc.
Okay. And you mentioned smart grids earlier. How do you see this applying in, the smart cities?
Yeah.
How do you see this being utilized as we look at more developing smart cities? Is there some lessons we can learn, or can these be applied?
Smart cities, I said, like ideally you have well-organized, well-functioning cities with good governance, and it's also valid when you have natural disaster. You need to know where most people are at that moment to save lives. But after that you need to know who lived there, who lost the house, what is about the compensation mechanism, where is the free land, where you want to move people who are displaced. So it's a lot of things for which you really need a good governance. You need data, you need technology, but also you need the politicians somehow to gain their attention and to work with you and for the benefit of the citizens. So there are several chapters which I mentioned yesterday. You have, for example, in the growing cities, very often you have informal settlements. People are moving from the villages and they occupy land, and they may live there already 10 years or 15 years. You cannot just easily take them out because they have been and they have customary rights already because they're there. And they're there because maybe you don't have good roads there to go easily for their job, but you have plenty of problems. You don't have schools there, or the properties are not registered and their value is low, and then they do not pay any taxes. So it's a lot of connected things. So there is a chapter for informal settlements which can help what the state should do, and it's really political. When the government is before elections, usually they don't want to do anything with informal settlements. So it's commitment made what the government should do, what is their responsibility. And it's said that you cannot just take people out from there. Like there should be resettlement policy, there should be compensatory mechanisms. There is another chapter dealing with compensations, what is the right things. Another chapters which are very valid, property valuation. For every property you need to know the value for various reasons. And it's incomes generating, but what is the good practices for what you use this money which you collect, and how you fairly evaluate the properties. So there is a chapter for valuation, which refer to international standards for valuation, national standards to be developed, transparency of the process. It should be social, it should be directed to environment protection. And there is another chapter for property taxation, how you do the taxation part. And there are several others which are directly related to the smart cities concept.
So it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's another source of information to incorporate into the smart city concept to deal with some of the issues that will develop.
And urban planning, it's also here. Like the government agreed that it should be a transparent process, it should be inclusive process, it should be gender sensitive process. Like it's a lot of rules which are integrated here. So you cannot do special planning or urban planning without such inclusive process.
I see.
So there are several more chapters, like what you do with climate change and disasters in relation to tenure. Like you should prepare the smart cities to be resilient. This is one of the definitions of the smart cities.
Right.
And there is text related to that, and the government's committed to that.
Okay. So has this been well received? Are you getting positive responses as you're out talking about it? It seems like it's a great tool.
Yeah, it's a good tool. It's a lot of work to be done. It will not be easy.
No.
We have various donors who already supported the implementation of the voluntary guidelines, and FAO is working in several different levels. Like at the global level, we develop like technical guides, e-learning, things like that. We prepare a lot of awareness-raising materials. We're doing, we did already regional workshops in every continent, several. Just to say how they can use it, from where to start, what to do. Now countries are sending requests for either specific area of support, so we are helping with one specific request,
right.
or they're asking to help them to do these multi-stakeholder platforms, to start the initial screening, and then to identify the priorities. In some countries they ask me to review some laws. And we cannot do alone this, like partnership is extremely important. We have already agreement with key partners, a lot of donors already pulling money in multi-stakeholder trust fund. So when the requests come, you do not start from the beginning,
right,
the whole
right.
process. You have already...
You've got the partners in place to draw on to address the issue.
So we are working at global, regional, and countries level, but we alone cannot achieve a lot.
Right,
like
sure.
You need support from all parties.
Well, this has been very helpful, very informative, and I appreciate it. If someone wants to get a copy of this, what is the best way for them to do so?
The easiest way is the technology. Like on FAO website, it's available in all 6 UN languages.
Okay.
You have it French, Spanish, English, Russian language, Arabic, and Chinese.
And you just download it?
You download
Okay.
it, and there are also 2-3 leaflets which give the short story of this. What was the process? How you can use it in 5 pages, for example. So it's more easy to understand. There are short videos also available on our website. There is e-learning. We are doing many modules, but the module for corruption in land was recently published, and a lot of interest. You can download it.
That's on the FAO website as well?
It's on our website. So land is the most corrupted sector in the world. It's the number 3 in the world. It's Transparency International study with FAO. So the most corrupted appears only courts and police. So you deal really with very difficult sector.
Wow.
And this module was very well accepted. And we have several more, like one more general, what the voluntary guidelines is, and several more are coming. So we are trying to help with whatever knowledge we have.
It sounds like a fantastic document and very well received and much needed in the community. So I congratulate you.
I think it was very
much
much needed. It was a big demand of this.
Well, good. Well, thank you very much for coming and speaking on this. This has been really interesting, and hopefully people will reach out and get copies of it and start introducing in their own communities.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thanks.